one day at a time. He glanced around the room. This place, what you're building here, it's good. It's what we needed 3 years ago. Maybe if something like this had existed then, things would have gone differently. Maybe, Torai acknowledged. But we can't change the past. We can only try to make the future better. I'm sorry, Danny said suddenly, for dragging you into everything. For the threats, the fire. You were in pain. You wanted justice for your friends. I understand that. Torai met his eyes. But you found a better way in the end. That counts for something, does it? Ask the families who finally got closure. Ask the other veterans who'll benefit from the reforms that came out of the investigation. Ask yourself if you'd rather be remembered as the man who took revenge or the man who chose justice. She paused. Yeah, Danny, it counts. He nodded slowly, then moved away. But Torai saw something lighter in his posture. Redemption was possible, even for the darkest mistakes. As the crowd began to thin, Captain Morrison appeared. He'd been quiet lately, keeping a lower profile after his moment at the mill. The experience had changed him. Commander, he said formally. Captain, I wanted to thank you for what you said at the trial, about leadership being about wisdom, not just rank. It's something I've been thinking about a lot. Yeah? I put in for retirement last month. My reserve command ends in 60 days. He smiled ruefully. Turns out, I was playing soldier all these years without really understanding what it meant. Better to step aside for someone who actually gets it. That took courage to admit. I learned from the best. Morrison extended his hand. What you're doing here matters, Commander. More than anything I did in uniform. After he left, Torai found herself alone with her mother. Helen had been quiet during the ceremony, but her eyes were bright. Your father would be so proud, Helen said softly. You think so? I know so. He always said true strength wasn't about how hard you could hit, but about how much you could endure and still choose kindness. Still choose to build instead of destroy. Helen squeezed her daughter's hand. You did that tonight. You're doing that every day. They walked out together into the cool evening air. Main Street was quiet, shops closing up for the night. But there was something different about the town now. Or maybe Torai was just seeing it differently. A truck pulled up her truck, repaired and returned after the investigation. Kyle Patterson's father, old Mr. Patterson, had done the work himself. Free of charge. His way of apologizing for his son's crimes and his own rudeness months ago. Going for a drive? Helen asked. Just around town. Clear my head. Torai drove through familiar streets, past the high school where she'd once been told she'd never amount to anything. Past the recruiting office where Sergeant Martinez had believed in her. Past the bank where everything had changed 6 months ago. She ended up at the town cemetery, where a new memorial had been erected. It honored all veterans from Meridian Falls, but specifically named the 8 soldiers who died in the convoy ambush 3 years ago. Their names were carved in stone now, their sacrifice recognized. Torai stood before the memorial in the fading light. She thought about Kyle Patterson's betrayal, about Danny Rodriguez's rage, about her own struggle to find her place. She thought about how close everything had come to ending in more death, more tragedy. But it hadn't. Because at the critical moment, people had chosen differently. Had chosen truth over revenge, justice over violence, redemption over condemnation. Her phone buzzed. A text from Janet Mitchell. First week fully booked. 47 veterans signed up for services. Local businesses offering 23 job opportunities. This is going to work. Torai smiled. Yeah, it was going to work. Not perfectly, nothing ever did. But it was a start. A bridge between the military and civilian worlds. Built one connection at a time. As she drove home, Torai passed Henderson's auto repair. The lights were still on. Kyle's father was there, working late as always. He saw her truck and stepped out, raising a hand in greeting. Not friendly exactly, but respectful. Acknowledging, she waved back. Small steps. Small changes. But they mattered. At home, her mother had left the porch light on. Tori sat on the porch swing, the one that creaked with familiar comfort, and looked out at the town she'd left 12 years ago and returned to 6 months ago. She'd come home, thinking she was finished, thinking the best part of her life was over. But maybe it was just beginning. Maybe the courage she'd shown in combat, the strength she'd built through sacrifice, the wisdom she'd earned through hardship, maybe all of it had been preparing her for this. For being a bridge. For showing that warriors could also be healers. That strength could build as well as destroy. The next morning, Tori woke early and went for her usual run. 5 miles through neighborhoods and streets, maintaining the discipline that had defined her life. But now when people saw her, they didn't just see Helen Brennan's daughter or a former soldier playing at civilian life. They saw Commander Victoria Brennan, who'd faced down armed robbers with courage, talked down a vengeful veteran with wisdom, and built something lasting with determination. At the end of her run, she stopped at the coffee shop on Main Street. The owner, Mrs. Chun Sam Chun's mother, one of the soldiers who died in the ambush, was opening up. "Commander," Mrs. Chun said warmly. "The usual? Please." While Mrs. Chun made her coffee, she spoke without turning around. "My Sam would have liked what you're doing. The center, the memorial, helping Danny find his way back. I'm just trying to honor their sacrifice." "You are." Mrs. Chun handed her the coffee, and Tori saw tears in the older woman's eyes. "You brought me my son's story. You made sure people knew what happened. That's more than the army ever did. More than I dared hope for." They stood in silence for a moment, bound by shared loss and hard-won peace. "Keep building, Commander," Mrs. Chun said finally. "The living need you now." Tori walked back home as the sun climbed higher, warming the day. She had a meeting at noon with 3 local companies interested in veteran hiring programs. At 2, she was speaking at the high school about military service and career options. At 4, a counseling session with a Marine who'd been home for 6 months and couldn't find his footing. A full day. A purposeful day. She'd been wrong 6 months ago. She hadn't left the most important part of her life behind in the military. She'd been preparing for it. Every mission, every challenge, every moment of sacrifice had been building toward this, using her strength not to destroy enemies, but to build bridges, to heal wounds, to show that courage had many forms, and the bravest warriors were sometimes the ones who chose peace. Commander Victoria Tori Brennan, Navy SEAL support veteran, Silver Star recipient, had finally found her place. Not despite coming home, but because of it. At Meridian Falls, the small town that had once underestimated her, now understood what she'd known all along. That real strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, helping others do the same, and building something better from the wreckage. The captain had pressed a gun to her head that day in the bank, testing her, challenging her, trying to break her. He'd learned the hard way what everyone eventually learned. You never threaten a Navy SEAL, not because they'll destroy you, but because they've been trained to endure anything, overcome everything, and somehow find a way to make things better even when they're at their worst. And that kind of strength, that's the kind that changes the world. The end. Lieutenant Commander Victoria Tori Brennan had survived 3 tours in the Middle East, 2 firefights that should have killed her, and a rescue mission that earned her the Silver Star. But standing in the parking lot of Henderson's Auto Repair in her hometown of Meridian Falls, Virginia, she wondered if the hardest battle was still ahead. The sun beat down on the cracked asphalt as she stepped out of her dusty pickup truck. 6 months ago, she'd been leading a SEAL support team through hostile territory. Now she was back in the small town where she'd grown up, trying to piece together a civilian life that felt more foreign than any desert outpost. Well, look who decided to come back. Tori turned to see Kyle Patterson leaning against the garage entrance, arms crossed. They'd gone to high school together, back when Kyle was the quarterback and she was the girl who ran 5 miles every morning before class. Now he was the assistant manager at the repair shop, and the look in his eyes told her that 12 years hadn't changed his opinion of her. "My truck's making a noise," Tori said evenly. "I called ahead. Someone said it'd be ready today." Kyle pushed off the wall and sauntered over. "Yeah, about that. We've been real busy. Might be a few more days." The woman on the phone said, "I don't care what Debbie said." Kyle's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We got paying customers ahead of you. Real people who actually live here, not just passing through between playing soldier." Tori felt the familiar tightness in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "I served my country for 12 years. I'd appreciate a little respect." "Respect?" Kyle laughed, and 2 other mechanics emerged from the garage to watch. "My daddy served in Vietnam. He fought a real war. What you did flying around in helicopters, sitting in air-conditioned offices, that ain't the same thing." One of the other mechanics, a younger guy Tori didn't recognize, snickered. "I heard they lowered all the standards just so girls could pretend to be soldiers." Tori's jaw tightened, but she'd learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. "Just call me when my truck's ready," she said, turning to leave. "Don't hold your breath." "Sweetheart," Kyle called after her. She walked the 2 miles back to her mother's house, the weight of old memories heavy on her shoulders. Meridian Falls hadn't changed much. Same white church steeple rising above Main Street. Same diner where the old-timers gathered for coffee and gossip. Same narrow minds. Her mother, Helen, was waiting on the porch, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. The worry lines around her eyes had deepened since Tori's father passed away 5 years ago. "Any trouble?" Helen asked softly. "Nothing I can't handle." Tori sat down on the porch swing, listening to its familiar creak. "Kyle Patterson's always been a small man with a big mouth," Helen said. "Just like his father." They sat in silence for a moment, watching neighbors walk by. Some nodded politely. Others crossed the street. The town was divided about Tori's return, just as it had been divided when she'd enlisted at 18 against everyone's advice. "There's a job fair next week at the community center," Helen offered. "They're looking for people with security experience." "Mom, I led missions behind enemy lines." "I don't think they're looking for that kind of security experience. You have to start somewhere, honey." Tori knew her mother was right. But the thought of checking bags at a shopping mall after everything she'd done made her feel hollow inside. She'd spent 12 years being excellent at something that mattered. Now, she was supposed to be grateful for whatever scraps this town wanted to throw her way. That evening, Tori went for a run through the neighborhood she'd known all her life. The physical exertion helped clear her mind, even as old memories surfaced with each familiar street corner. Past the high school where she'd been told she was too small, too weak, too female to amount to anything. Past the recruiting office where Sergeant Martinez had looked her in the eye and said she had what it took. He'd been right. She'd made it through Buddy S training when 70% of the men had rung out. She'd earned her place on SEAL support team through sheer determination and skill. She'd saved lives, completed missions, done things that would never be discussed outside classified briefings. But here, in Meridian Falls, she was just Helen Brennan's daughter. The girl who'd left. The woman who thought she was better than everyone else thought as darkness fell. Tori returned home to find her mother asleep in front of the television. She covered her with a blanket and went to her old bedroom, now a guest room with faded wallpaper and boxes of childhood memories. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if coming home had been a mistake. Outside, Meridian Falls slept peacefully, unaware that its quiet streets were about to become the setting for something that would test everything Tori had learned in 12 years of service. Unaware that the woman they dismissed and underestimated was about to face her greatest challenge yet, and unaware that sometimes the most dangerous place for a warrior isn't the battlefield, it's home. 3 weeks passed. Tori found work at a security company in the next town over, driving 40 miles each way to guard construction sites at night. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave her time to think during those long, quiet hours. She was filling out paperwork at First National Bank of Meridian Falls when she first saw Captain Bradley Morrison. He walked in wearing a pressed khaki uniform, moving with the swagger of a man who believed his own legend. Tori recognized the type. Immediately, she'd served with plenty of them. Morrison was the commander of the local Army Reserve Unit, a position that made him a big fish in their small-town pond. He'd never deployed, never seen combat, but he wore his rank like a crown. "Victoria Brennan," he said, appearing beside her at the counter. "I heard you were back, Captain," she acknowledged neutrally. "It's good to see women taking an interest in military service." His smile was patronizing. "Even if it's just support roles." Tori counted to 3 before responding. "I was with SEAL Team 5 Support Detachment." Right. The SEALs." Morrison nodded as if humoring a child. "Well, we can't all be in combat positions. Someone has to file the paperwork and make the coffee." The bank teller, an older woman named Margaret, glanced between them uncomfortably. "Miss Brennan, I just need your signature here." Before Tori could respond, the front door burst open. 3 men wearing ski masks charged in, guns drawn. The leader, tall, with a military-style stance, fired a shot into the ceiling. "Everyone on the ground." Now, time seemed to slow. Tori's training kicked in instantly, her mind cataloging details. 3 suspects, 2 armed with pistols, 1 with a shotgun. The leader moved like he had training. The other 2 were nervous amateur. 12 civilians in the bank, including 2 elderly customers near the door. Most people screamed and dropped. Tori lowered herself carefully, hands visible, scanning for exits and cover. Captain Morrison practically threw himself behind a desk, his face pale with terror. "You!" The leader grabbed Margaret, pressing his gun to her temple. "Open the vault." Margaret's hands shook so badly she could barely work the computer. "I need the manager." "I can't." "Then get him." The robber's voice cracked with tension. The manager, a timid man named Gerald Harper, stumbled forward. "Please, don't hurt anyone. We'll cooperate." Tori watched everything unfold with the cold clarity that had kept her alive in combat. These weren't professionals. The one with the shotgun kept his finger on the trigger, dangerous, unpredictable. The third man was sweating through his mask, his gun hand trembling. "Everyone put your phones on the floor. Slide them to the center." The leader commanded. People complied, the phone skittering across the polished floor. Tori slid hers with the others, but her mind was already working through scenarios. 3 exits: front door, side door to the offices, back door near the vault. The security guard, old Bill Hendricks, had been at the vault entrance when they came in. He hadn't come out. "Where's the guard?" the leader demanded, as if reading her thoughts. Gerald's voice quaked. "He went on break." "He's not here." A lie. Bill never left his post early, which meant he was either hiding or already neutralized. Tori prayed it was the former Dot. The second robber grabbed Captain Morrison, yanking him up. You're military. Where's your phone?" Morrison's voice came out as a whimper. I gave it to you. It's with the others. You got any weapons?" No, I'm just an administrator. I work with paperwork. Please." The robber shoved him back down in disgust. Some soldier. Torai felt eyes on her and looked up to see the leader staring at her. Something in her posture, her calm, had caught his attention. Unlike everyone else, she wasn't crying or shaking. She was still, controlled, waiting. "You," he said, moving toward her. "What's your story?" "I'm nobody," Torai said quietly. "Just here to cash a check." He crouched down, bringing the gun level with her face. "You don't look scared." "I'm terrified," she lied smoothly. "I just freeze up when I'm scared." The shotgun-wielding robber laughed nervously. "Leave her alone, Danny. We need to grab the cash and go." The leader, Danny, ignored him, still studying Torai. "You ex-military?" "No," Torai said. "Another lie. You're lying." He pressed the gun to her forehead, cold metal against her skin. "I can always tell." The bank went utterly silent. Margaret sobbed quietly. Captain Morrison had his eyes squeezed shut. Gerald looked like he might faint, but Torai's eyes stayed locked on the leader's, unflinching. In that moment, she made a calculation. If she acted now, the nervous one with the shotgun might start shooting. Margaret was too close to the leader. Too many civilians could die, so she did what every fiber of her training screamed against. She waited. "Yeah," Danny said softly, almost admiringly. "You were military. I can see it." He stood up, keeping the gun on her. "Stay still and stay quiet, soldier girl. We'll be gone soon, and nobody has to die." The manager returned with bags of cash. The robbers grabbed them. Movements rushed now, adrenaline and fear making them sloppy. As they backed toward the door, Danny took one last look at Torai. "You're lucky you didn't try to be a hero," he said. Then they were gone. Tires squealing outside. In the aftermath, chaos erupted. People crying, calling loved ones, giving statements to the police who arrived within minutes. Captain Morrison emerged from behind the desk, trying to regain his composure and authority. But Torai stood apart, her mind replaying every detail, every word, every movement, because she'd recognized something in the leader's stance. His voice, his training, and she had a terrible feeling this was far from over. The Meridian Falls Police Department wasn't equipped for a bank robbery. Within hours, FBI agents arrived from Richmond, setting up operations in the conference room at Town Hall. Torai gave her statement to a young agent named Kevin Ross, who barely looked old enough to shave. "And you're certain you didn't recognize any of the perpetrators?" Ross asked, typing on his laptop. "I couldn't see their faces," Torai replied. "But the leader, the one they called Danny, he moved like someone with training. Military training? Possibly." Torai chose her words carefully. "He had discipline. He knew how to control the room." Ross made a note. "Several witnesses mentioned you remained calm throughout the incident. One said the suspect put a gun to your head." "Yes, that must have been frightening." "It was." Torai kept her expression neutral. She wasn't about to explain that she'd been in situations far more dangerous than a small-town bank robbery. That she'd once spent 8 hours pinned down by enemy fire with nothing but a handgun and her wits. That a gun to the head was terrifying, yes, but not paralyzing, not when you'd been trained to function through fear. After the interview, Torai stepped outside to find Captain Morrison holding court with local news cameras. "Remained calm and followed protocol," he was saying. "As military personnel, we're trained to assess situations and protect civilians." Torai walked past without comment, but Morrison's voice followed her. "Miss Brennan, perhaps you'd like to share your perspective?" She turned. The camera swiveled toward her. "I don't have anything to add, Captain." "Come now." "You were right there. Very composed, I noticed." His tone carried a subtle mockery that the cameras wouldn't catch, but Torai heard clearly. "Though I suppose in support roles, You don't face the same pressure as combat soldiers. Before Torai could respond, a voice cut through the crowd. Actually, Captain, I'd be curious to hear what you did during the robbery. Sheriff Tom Dawson emerged from the building, weathered face, impassive. He was a Vietnam vet, old-school law enforcement, and one of the few people in town who'd welcomed Torai home without judgment. Morrison's smile tightened. I followed proper protocol. Kept civilians calm. Waited for law enforcement to arrive. Dawson looked at Torai. Walk with me, Commander. They moved away from the cameras, heading toward Dawson's patrol car. You see something in there, he said quietly. Not a question, maybe. The FBI's good, but they're outsiders. They don't know this town or these people. Dawson opened his car door, pulled out a file. 3 similar robberies in the past 6 months. Same most small town banks, teams of 3, in and out fast. No injuries, but getting bolder. You think they're connected? I know they are. What I don't know is why they picked Meridian Falls now. He handed her the file. And why one of them seemed interested in you. Torai flipped through crime scene photos, witness statements. Sheriff, I'm not law enforcement anymore. No, but you're someone who sees things other people miss. Read it over. If something strikes you, call me. He paused. Unofficially, of course. The FBI wouldn't appreciate a civilian consultant. That evening, Torai spread the file across her mother's kitchen table. Helen brought coffee and sat down, reading glasses perched on her nose. Are you sure you want to get involved in this? I'm already involved, Mom. I was there. That's not what I mean. Helen's eyes held concern, and something else, pride, maybe, or recognition. You've been home less than 2 months, and you're already jumping into danger again. I'm just looking at information. But as Torai studied the reports, patterns emerged. The robberies were too clean, too well coordinated. Someone was planning them with military precision, timing police response rates, studying traffic patterns, choosing targets carefully. And there was something else, something that nagged at her. Her phone rang. Sheriff Dawson. Turn on Channel 7, he said without preamble. Torai grabbed the remote. The local news showed security footage from the bank. The anchor's voice narrated. Remarkable composure shown by this woman, identified as Victoria Brennan, a former Navy service member. The footage showed the leader pressing the gun to Torai's forehead, showed her unwavering stare. The anchor continued. Sources say Brennan served in a combat support role overseas. Her military training clearly evident in this tense moment. They released the footage, Torai said into the phone. Against my recommendation, Dawson replied grimly. BFB, I wanted public cooperation. Now your face is all over the news. Torai watched herself on screen, saw the leader's body language, the way he'd studied her. A cold feeling settled in her stomach. Sheriff, I need to see something. The other robberies, were there any veterans present? A pause. Let me check the witness lists. She heard paper shuffling. Yes, in 2 of them. Why? What happened to them afterward? Another pause, longer this time. Nothing. They gave statements and ... wait. His voice changed. One of them was in a car accident 2 weeks later. Single vehicle, late at night. Survived but barely. And the other? House fire. Everyone got out okay, but the place was destroyed. Arson was suspected but never proven. Torai's military mind assembled the pieces. They're testing people. Looking for someone specific. Looking for what? I don't know yet. But Sheriff, I think putting me on the news was a mistake. She was right. 2 days later, Torai's truck was found at the bottom of Miller's Ravine. The brake lines cut clean through. She'd been inside it when she noticed the pedal going soft. Had managed to jump out before it went over the edge. And that night, someone tried to burn down her mother's house. The fire trucks arrived in time to save the structure, but the message was clear. Torai stood in the yard, soot on her face, watching firefighters douse the last of the flames. Her mother was safe. Torai had gotten her out within seconds of smelling smoke. But their home, the place where Torai had thought she could find peace, was now another battleground. Sheriff Dawson pulled up, lights flashing. He took one look at the scene and his jaw tightened. "That's it. You're both going into protective custody." "No," Torai said firmly. "Commander, they're trying to scare me or silence me. Either way, hiding won't help." Torai turned to face him, and her eyes held the steel that had carried her through 12 years of service. "But I need to know what I'm dealing with. Everything you haven't told me yet." Dawson glanced at the firefighters, then gestured toward his car. Inside, with the doors closed, he pulled out another file. This one, thicker, marked with federal seals. 3 years ago, there was a military convoy ambush overseas, Afghanistan. 8 soldiers killed. But $2.3 million in cash meant for local reconstruction projects disappeared. The investigation concluded it was enemy action, but some inconsistencies never sat right with Army SID. Torai's blood ran cold. Someone on the inside. Never proven. But 6 months ago, these bank robberies started. Same area where some of the convoy survivors resettled after discharge. And the amount stolen so far? Almost exactly what went missing 3 years ago. "Someone's rebuilding the stash," Torai said. "Money that was already dirty, stolen once, hidden or lost. Now they're stealing clean money to replace it before someone notices the original theft. That's the FBI's working theory. They just don't know who." Dawson opened another document. The convoy survivors scattered across 4 states. 3 of them live within 100 miles of here. One of them, he pointed to a photo. Torai's stomach dropped. The man in the picture was Danny Rodriguez, the same Danny who'd led the bank robbery. She was certain, even without the mask. The stance, the voice, the way he'd moved through the bank with military efficiency. Danny Rodriguez. Staff sergeant, decorated service record. He was wounded in the ambush, medically discharged. Lives in Ashton, 30 miles from here. He's not just rebuilding a stash, Torai said slowly, pieces clicking into place. He's searching for something. Or someone. What do you mean? At the bank, he wasn't just robbing it. He was studying people. He focused on Captain Morrison when he saw the uniform. He tested me when he realized I was military. The other robberies, you said veterans were present and then targeted afterward. You think he's looking for someone specific? I think he's looking for whoever betrayed him during the ambush. Someone who knew about the money, knew about the convoy route. Someone who's been hiding here, living a quiet civilian life, thinking they got away with it. Dawson's expression darkened. And you think that person is in Meridian Falls? I know they are. Why else would Rodriguez come here? Why else would he be so methodical? Torai's mind raced. The original theft had to be an inside job. Someone with access to convoy schedules. Someone who could tip off the enemy. After the ambush, that person disappeared into civilian life with their cut of the money. But Rodriguez survived. And he wants revenge. More than that. He wants the rest of the money. Torai stared at the file. Sheriff, I need to see the list of everyone who served in that unit. Everyone who made it home. 20 minutes later, they sat in Dawson's office, comparing military service records with local residents. Most names meant nothing. Then Torai saw one that made her freeze. Kyle Patterson. Dawson looked up. The mechanic? His service record says he was a supply clerk, stationed at the same base. Discharged 6 months before the ambush, but Torai scanned the documents. He would have had access to convoy schedules. He would have known about cash movements. That's circumstantial. It's a starting point. Torai stood. And if I'm right, Rodriguez already suspects him. That's why he's here. That's why he's being so careful, testing everyone with military backgrounds. He's making sure he has the right target before he strikes. Then we need to bring Patterson in. Get the FBI. No. Torai's voice was sharp. If Rodriguez even suspects we're onto him, he'll disappear. We need proof, and we need to catch him in the act. Commander, you're talking about using yourself as bait. I'm talking about finishing what Rodriguez started 3 years ago. He thinks I'm a threat because I saw through him. Because I stayed calm while everyone else panicked. He's gonna come after me, and when he does, I'll be ready. Dawson shook his head. This is police business now. With respect, Sheriff, your department and the FBI have been chasing these guys for 6 months. I can end this in one night. Torai met his eyes. I've run operations more dangerous than this. Trust me, it's not about trust. It's about the office door burst open. Agent Ross, the young FBI investigator, looked frantic. Sheriff, we just got a call. Captain Morrison's been taken. Someone grabbed him from his house an hour ago. His wife said 3 men in masks forced him into a van. Torai and Dawson exchanged glances. Rodriguez is making his move, Torai said. But he took the wrong person. Morrison wasn't in that unit. He's never deployed. Then why? Ross stopped. Unless Rodriguez is covering his tracks. Taking anyone who might have seen him at the bank. Or he's sending another message, Torai said grimly. He knows I served. He knows I was calm under pressure. Now he's taken a captain, showing me he's not afraid of rank or authority. Showing me I'm next. Dawson grabbed his radio. We need to find Morrison before. Torai's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Commander Brennan. Rodriguez's voice was calm, almost friendly. I think it's time we had a talk. You're smart enough to know what this is about. Where's Morrison? The captain is safe. For now. But I need something from you. A pause. I need you to deliver a message to Kyle Patterson. Tell him his old friend Danny wants to meet. Tonight. Midnight. The old grain mill on Route 12. Come alone. Bring the money. I'm not your messenger. Yes, you are. Because if Patterson doesn't show, the captain dies. And then I start working through everyone else you care about in this little town. Your mother's house was just a warning, Commander. I can do much worse. The line went dead. Torai looked at Dawson and Ross. He's forcing a confrontation. Using Morrison as leverage to draw out Patterson. It's a trap, Ross said. For Patterson or for you? For both of us, Torai agreed. But it's also our chance to end this. The old grain mill sat on the edge of town, abandoned for 20 years. Its windows were broken, its walls covered in graffiti and decay. The perfect place for a confrontation that couldn't be witnessed. Torai arrived 90 minutes before midnight, moving through the shadows with the practiced silence of her training. She'd argued with Sheriff Dawson for an hour, finally convincing him to let her go in first, alone. FBI and local police would form a perimeter, ready to move in, but they had to let the situation develop. Had to catch Rodriguez and his team in the act, and they had to save Captain Morrison. Inside the mill, Torai found him quickly. Morrison was tied to a chair in the main room, gagged, eyes wide with terror. He'd been roughed up, but wasn't seriously injured. Torai moved to him, checking for traps, then carefully removed the gag. They left me here as bait, Morrison gasped. They knew someone would come early. They're watching. I know, Torai whispered. Play along. Stay quiet. She didn't untie him. Instead, she moved back into the shadows, positioning herself behind old machinery that provided cover and multiple angles of fire. She'd brought her service weapon, one of the few things she'd kept from her, military life, and now it felt natural in her hand, At 11:45, Kyle Patterson arrived. Tori watched him enter through a side door, carrying a duffel bag, his face pale and sweating in the moonlight streaming through broken windows. "Danny!" Kyle called out. "Danny, I'm here. I brought what you wanted." No response. Kyle saw Morrison and rushed over. "Captain?" "What the hell? It's a trap," Morrison hissed. "Get out of here." But it was too late. The doors slammed shut. Lights blazed on portable work lights that Rodriguez's team had set up in advance. And Danny Rodriguez stepped out from an upper platform, flanked by his two partners, all three now unmasked. "Kyle Patterson," Rodriguez said. His voice echoed through the mill. "Been a long time. Danny, listen, I can explain. Explain how you sold out your own unit? Explain how you gave the Taliban our convoy route for a cut of the money." Rodriguez descended the stairs slowly. "Explain how 8 men died because of your greed. It wasn't like that. I didn't know they'd. I thought they just wanted to steal the money. I didn't know they'd kill anyone. But you took your share, didn't you? Your 30 pieces of silver. And then you ran. Changed your name on paper. Moved back to your hometown. Thought no one would ever find you." Kyle dropped the duffel bag. "I brought the money back. All of it. Everything I took, plus interest. We can settle this." "We can settle?" Rodriguez's laugh was cold. "You think money fixes what you did? You think cash brings back Martinez? Or Thompson? Or my best friend, Sam Chun, who died in my arms because of you?" Tori watched the scene unfold, her finger resting alongside her weapon's trigger guard. She could take the shot now, but Morrison was too close to the line of fire. She needed a clearer angle. "Danny, please," Kyle's voice broke. "I've lived with the guilt every day. Every single day. I can't change what I did, but I can try to make it right. There's only one way to make this right." Rodriguez pulled out his gun. "FBI, drop your weapons." Agent Ross's voice boomed through megaphones outside. "The building is surrounded." Rodriguez's team tensed, guns swinging toward the doors. But Rodriguez himself remained focused on Kyle, his weapon steady. "You think I didn't plan for this?" Rodriguez called out. "You think I didn't know the hero commander would call the cops? I'm not leaving here, and neither is Patterson. The only question is how many others die with us." "Don't be stupid," Tori said, stepping out from cover. Every gun in the room turned toward her. "Commander Brennan," Rodriguez said. "Right on time. Let Morrison go. This is between you and Patterson." "Is it?" Rodriguez gestured to his team. One of them grabbed Morrison, gun to his head. The other kept his shotgun trained on Tori. "See, Commander, I've been thinking about you. About how calm you were in that bank. About your service record. Yes, I did my research. SEL support team. 3 tours. Silver Star for Valor. That's not relevant. It's very relevant. Because I need someone to understand. Someone who knows what it means to serve, to trust your unit, to depend on the person next to you." Rodriguez's eyes were haunted. "Someone who knows what it feels like when that trust is betrayed." "I understand," Tori said quietly. "But this won't bring them back. No, but it'll be justice." He pointed the gun at Kyle's head. "Unless you can give me a reason not to pull this trigger." Tori's mind raced. Outside, she could hear movement, the FBI getting into position. But any assault would turn this into a bloodbath. Morrison would die. Probably Kyle too. Maybe her as well. She needed to change the dynamic. "You want justice?" Tori asked. "Real justice? Then do this the right way. Let Patterson stand trial. Let the world know what he did. Let those families hear the truth." "The truth?" Rodriguez's laugh was bitter. "The truth is buried under classified reports and political convenience. The Army doesn't want this story told. It makes them look bad, then make them tell it. Go public. You've got Patterson, you've got evidence, you've got witnesses. I'll testify. I'll make sure everyone knows what happened. Torre took a step forward. But if you kill him now, you're just a murderer. You dishonor everyone who died in that ambush. She's right, Morrison said suddenly. Everyone looked at him. The captain, who'd cowered behind desks and played at being a soldier, met Rodriguez's eyes with unexpected strength. I'm not a combat soldier. I'll never be what you are. But even I know that murder isn't justice. It's just more death. Rodriguez's gun hand trembled. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Kyle Patterson did something unexpected. He stood up straight, wiped his eyes, and spoke clearly. I'll confess. Everything. I'll testify against everyone involved. I'll spend the rest of my life in prison if that's what it takes. But Danny's right. I can't change what I did. I can only try to make sure the truth comes out. Kyle. Rodriguez's voice cracked. I'm sorry, Kyle said. I know it doesn't mean anything. I know sorry doesn't bring anyone back. But I am. I've been sorry every day for 3 years, and I'll be sorry every day for the rest of my life. The silence stretched. Outside, Torre could hear Sheriff Dawson on the megaphone, negotiating, buying time. Inside, 5 people stood frozen in a tableau of pain and possibility. Rodriguez lowered his gun. Okay, he said softly. Okay, we do this right. We tell the truth. All of it. The next few hours were chaos. FBI agents storming in, arrests, statements, medical checks. Kyle Patterson confessed to everything, providing names and details of the conspiracy that had led to the ambush. Rodriguez and his team were charged with robbery and kidnapping, but given the circumstances, the prosecutor indicated they'd be looking at reduced sentences in exchange for testimony. Captain Morrison, shaken but unharmed, gave a statement to the press that was surprisingly honest. I learned something tonight, he told the cameras. Being a soldier isn't about rank or uniform. It's about character. And Commander Brennan showed more courage and wisdom tonight than I've shown in 20 years of service. As dawn broke over Meridian Falls, Torre stood outside the mill with Sheriff Dawson. You did good work tonight, Commander, he said. I just talked. That's all. No, you understood. You saw past the anger to what Rodriguez really needed. Not revenge, but recognition. Justice for his fallen friends. Dawson smiled. That's wisdom, not just training. Torre looked at the town, bathed in morning light. Maybe there was a place for her here after all. Not as the girl who'd left or the soldier playing at civilian life, but as someone who could bridge both worlds. Someone who understood that real strength wasn't about physical courage. It was about moral courage. About standing in the gap and finding solutions when violence seemed inevitable. Her phone rang. Her mother. I saw the news, Helen said, her voice thick with emotion. Are you okay? I'm okay, Mom. I'm coming home. Good. I'll make coffee. We can start planning repairs to the house. Torre smiled. Yeah, repairs. I think I'm ready for that. As she drove through Meridian Falls, the sun rising over familiar streets, Torre felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose. The understanding that her battles weren't over. They just changed form. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. Kyle Patterson would spend years in prison. His testimony helping to expose a larger conspiracy that had allowed the convoy ambush to happen. Rodriguez and his team received reduced sentences, their genuine remorse and cooperation weighing in their favor. The families of the fallen soldiers finally got answers. Closure, justice, and Commander Victoria Brennan, once underestimated and dismissed by her hometown, became someone different, not just a decorated veteran, but a bridge between military precision and civilian compass. The community center gymnasium was packed. Folding chairs lined up in neat rows, filled with faces Torai had known all her life, and some she was still getting to know. At the front of the room, a banner read, "Meridian Falls Veterans Support Network, Grand Opening." Torai stood off to the side, adjusting her blazer nervously. Public speaking had never bothered her during mission briefings, but this felt different. More personal. More vulnerable. "You ready?" Sheriff Dawson asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. "As I'll ever be." Torai accepted the cup gratefully. Good crowd. Word spread fast after what happened at the mill. Dawson surveyed the room. People want to help. They just didn't know how. He was right. In the 6 months since that night, Meridian Falls had undergone a quiet transformation. The bank robbery case had put a spotlight on the challenges veterans faced coming home, not just the obvious struggles with employment and healthcare, but the invisible battles with belonging, purpose, and respect. Torai had testified at Kyle Patterson's trial, her words carrying weight that surprised even her. She'd spoken not just about the night at the mill, but about what it meant to serve, to sacrifice, and to come home to a country that didn't always understand. The local news had picked up the story, then regional outlets. Eventually, a national morning show had interviewed her. She hadn't sought the attention, but she'd used it. Used it to talk about veterans who weren't making headlines. Used it to shine a light on small towns like Meridian Falls, where returning soldiers often felt more isolated than they ever had overseas. 5 minutes, called Janet Mitchell, the center's new coordinator. She was a Navy veteran herself, retired after 23 years, who'd moved to town specifically to help launch this program. Torai took a deep breath and walked to the small stage. The room quieted. She saw her mother in the 3rd row, sitting next to Bill Hendricks, the bank security guard, who'd survived that day by hiding in the vault when he'd heard the commotion. She saw Agent Ross, who'd become an unexpected friend. She even saw some of the mechanics from Henderson's auto repair, looking uncomfortable but present. And in the back row, she saw Danny Rodriguez. He'd been released 2 weeks ago after serving a reduced sentence. Part of his parole required community service, and he'd chosen to do it here, helping other veterans navigate their return to civilian life. It was strange seeing him in this context, not as an adversary, but as someone who understood the same struggles she did. "Thank you all for coming," Torai began, her voice steady. 6 months ago, I came home to Meridian Falls, thinking I'd left the most important part of my life behind. I thought military service was something that happened over there, in distant places, and that coming home meant leaving all of it behind. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I was wrong. Coming home is part of the service. Maybe the hardest part. Because in combat, you know who you are. You know your mission. You know your purpose. But here, in the place where you grew up, sometimes you feel like you don't fit anymore. Heads nodded throughout the room. She saw recognition in eyes, not just veterans, but family members who'd watched loved ones struggle with the same thing. This center exists because we need each other. Veterans need a place where they're understood, where their service is respected, where they can find purpose again. And communities need to understand that the men and women who served aren't just looking for thank yous. They're looking for opportunities to keep contributing, to keep being excellent at something that matters. Torai gestured to the space around them. Here, we're going to offer job training, counseling services, a place to just talk with people who get it. But more than that, we're going to build partnerships with local businesses, schools, and organizations. We're going to show this town what veterans can offer. And we're going to help veterans see that their skills, their discipline, their dedication, all of it still matters here at home. The applause started slowly, then built. People stood. Tori felt emotion tighten her throat, but she held it together. After the ceremony, she worked the room, shaking hands and answering questions. A young woman approached, maybe 25, with the bearing of someone recently discharged. "Commander Brennan?" "I'm Amy Foster. I just got out of the Air Force 3 months ago. I've been struggling." "What's your background, Amy?" "Aircraft maintenance. 6 years. But every job I apply for here says I don't have the right civilian certifications, even though I can break down and rebuild a jet engine blindfolded." Tori smiled. "Janet Mitchell, our coordinator? She specializes in translating military experience into civilian qualifications. Set up a meeting with her. She'll help you figure out which certifications you need and how to get them. And in the meantime, we have contacts at 3 local aviation companies who specifically want to hire veterans with your skills." Amy's eyes brightened. "Really? Really? Your service doesn't end just because you took off the uniform. It just changes form." As Amy walked away looking hopeful, Danny Rodriguez approached. They hadn't spoken much since his release. The situation was still complicated, still painful. "That was a good speech," he said quietly. "Thanks. How are you adjusting?"